It's the eCommerce Master Plan Podcast, here to help you grow your e-commerce business faster and more efficiently by cutting through the hype to bring you inspiration and guidance from the e-commerce sector and beyond. Here's your host, Chloe Thomas.
Hello, Masterplan World, and welcome to our latest podcast. It's a pleasure, as always, to have you listening. Let me introduce you to today's special guest. Andrew Wilson is a mail order marketing genius. In fact, his was the first e-commerce training workshop I ever attended way back in the early 2000s. He now works with many e-commerce businesses around the UK. But Andrew's here today to chatting with us because he's recently stepped back into the shoes of the e-commerce business owner, having purchased allergybestbuys.co.uk, a mail order e-commerce business providing products that help allergy sufferers all over the world. Andrew, I've just given our listeners a very quick overview of you and your business and where you are now. So how did you personally get started in e-commerce?
Well, on the consultancy side, I started my consultancy in 98 when e-commerce was just becoming a thing, and had grown up since the end of the last ice age in catalogs, and found e-commerce actually really exciting. It was a new thing to do. I've been doing the old thing for about 20 years, and it was really nice to have something new to do. And it was very exciting, and I am a bit of a technology enthusiast, so it was great for me. And I got very interested there. Evidently, as you say, ran courses because I managed to educate myself. And in my business, in my consultancy business, was educated by my clients as well, it has to be said. And then gave consultancy right up to the end of last year. Well, I still do. But then foolishly decided to buy a business, put my money where my mouth is.
Excellent. As someone who kind of started off in that mail order world, rather like I did, but with a lot more experience, before the world of e-commerce came along, it always struck me that the mail order world had the right skill set to transfer into e-commerce, the ability to work with data, the ability to understand where the money's coming from, what you're paying for those orders, and so forth. Would you say that's something that you've been able to, your experience in the catalogue world really, really helps when it comes into getting an e-commerce business to tick?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. The people who should have been running e-commerce businesses weren't. And in the early days of e-commerce, you had all these people with really great ideas, putting websites together and starting businesses. And then they get an order and go, what do we do now? And it's all the back end stuff that the catalog people actually knew and had honed over, actually 150 years. And these people came in and kind of panicking with stuff we kind of went, yeah. So yes, and the whole data approach, but was also ingrained within catalogs. But the people who are running e-commerce companies for them in the main were extraordinarily bright because, they're pioneers. And so, you have to be quite bright to be a pioneer, and they got it quite quickly. And then, of course, I suppose the real big shift was when, Google got into the market and people began to really take notice of data.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about where your business is right now.
Right, we're a tiddly little business. It's turns over a mere £250,000 a year. We think it's going to grow. We bought the business. We actually took ownership of half of the business, it has to be said, in October of last year. We took a look at it. We thought that the website needed revising. The existing warehousing was not good for us. It was in a farm up in Yorkshire. And also, we thought the catalogue could do with a bit of a revamp. So up and by the sort of end of February, it does sound absolutely mad when I say it. We actually built a new website from just standing start. We completely revised the catalogue, and we shifted the warehouse to being outsourced down in with our friends at Client Base, well, I think, down at Newton Abbot.
So you just kind of changed everything then?
Yeah, yeah, and wondered why I kind of woke up some morning screaming. It was, but we needed to force the pace a bit, and where it is now, we went through the new website, thing when we actually made it even worse, because we not only moved to a new website, is that just after that we moved on to HTTPS as well. So we not only had the elephant's trunk of the time between going to the new websites and the redirects kicking in, but we also made our site more difficult for Google to look at, because we just sort of changed the entire thing. So the traffic was a bit quiet for a while. So here's a little tip: don't do those two things at once.
Yeah, it is kind of like, we could do this and this. It's going to be chaos. Let's just chuck all the chaos in for a couple of months, and then we can get on with working it out afterwards. I respect the approach. So you're based in the UK, and are you selling all over the world or just to the UK?
Pretty much by accident. We're selling all over the world. We sell needs, we don't sell wants. So we sell to people who would not buy our product if they didn't actually need to. It's actually stuff that people would prefer not to buy. It's people, our main markets, and this may sound slightly callous, but they're eczema, asthma, and all sorts of allergies from, and there are allergies that you won't realize people have. There are people, there's things like alcohol allergies. Would you believe it? Yeah. Alcohol is my friend. Alcohol allergies, nickel allergies, is a huge allergy. There are only food allergies, which most people know about. But there's various curious things about the skin. So we sell products to help people relieve the symptoms that they have, because we can't cure them. But what we can have is we can give them some relief from the symptoms that they have.
And those symptom reliefs, just to give the listeners an idea of what sort of products we're talking about. Are we talking supplements? Are we talking clothing? We try and avoid supplements, to be perfectly honest. I mean, the legislation around supplements is absolutely mind-boggling. I did an awful lot of work in the vitamin market in my consultancy days, when it was all sort of Jersey-based and all the rest, and Guernsey-based. And the EU have really clamped down on it in perhaps a little heavy-handedly. So we don't do those. Big markets for us are things like bedding. So if you've got asthma or eczema, for instance, basically dust mites crap in your bedding. I mean, there's no nice way of putting this. And if some people are actually allergic to dust mite poo, in terms of skin, sometimes when they breathe it in, they have respiratory complaints. So we actually sell encasements for your bedding, which have to be, less than 10 microns weave and all the rest of it. And it's fabulous stuff. I mean, it has to be said, it's very high quality. It's made for us, especially, and it is our own brand. And it is our major seller. And we sell a lot of that, but we also sell some attractive bedding too. We have, the bamboo does have some nice, antiseptic kind of qualities. And we do a super range of bamboo bedding, which, just to test it out, we stuck on our own bed, and it is actually nicer than Egyptian cotton. Oh, wow.
It's lovely, and we've got some beautiful colors and stuff. I mean, it is really good. The other tweak that we have when we're selling is that because people have a need for this because of a medical condition, we can actually offer products VAT free. So they can actually claim the VAT back when they've purchased from us. And one major advance we made on the new site rather than the old one was that we made this process available online. So in the basket, they could actually claim to have the VAT back and not actually pay the VAT. So that, that's not 20% discount, but
Yeah, but it just makes you that bit more appealing than any other site where they have to, buy it and then claim it back and all the rest of it, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that we pinched the idea off one of my ex-clients, which is Cozy Feet, who you probably know, who do wider fitting shoes, and they actually had it online, and we thought that would be a damn good idea to put it on ours. And of course, one of the technical complications is that you actually have to store all those events so that it will be available if HMRC come knocking on the door saying, could you just prove this person had an allergy? It's not us. The onus isn't on us to prove that they actually have an allergy. It's onus is on us just to prove that we let them tell us that they had an allergy.
That piece of VAT is very complicated, and I think the whole international selling piece with VAT is going to become a big talking point and a big growth industry as we go into the next couple of years. But I want to just find out a little bit more about where the business is right now, and then we'll move on to get into a lot of detail in a couple of areas. So what are the key kind of widgets and plugins you've got going on the website, like merchandising, reviews, that kind of stuff?
We have let on the website, to be honest, we have been taking things quite gently, mainly because we didn't want to kind of overload it. On the website itself, we're just going live this week, actually, with Sub 2. Do you want to talk about Sub 2?
Yeah, let's talk about Sub 2.
Yeah, Sub 2. Sub 2 Technologies, what they do is that they take your database of customers, and they have a pool of other customers, of their other clients, a bit like any of the data pools, like Abacus or Club Canvas, and they chuck everybody in the pool. And there's quite a lot of things they can do with this. One of the things they can do is that when somebody comes to your site and browses, or abandons a basket, they can, because they've got all these people in their pool cookied, they can then send an abandoned browsing email to people, which actually pictures the product they were looking at, and just said, thanks for visiting our site, and please lavishly give us another go. I'm very hopeful that it's going to be very good for us. I certainly know that when Crew Clothing used it, they had a 300% uplift in abandoned basket responses. Wow. So I know. And if you, there is one gift retailer. I mean, I know this, and I know the gift retailer, but I can't give away their secrets. Yeah. Who uses their ROI as a stick to beat every other every other supplier of online marketing. It is very good. And then after that, when that's done, you can then set it up. So if anybody come from your database comes on to the site who has bought previously, in 300 milliseconds, it rearranges the site to reflect their previous purchases. Oh,
very cool.
It is very cool. And the great thing is, so, one of the great things is if you haven't got in another market, if you haven't got the size in their dress size or their shoe size, you don't show them anything that is not in their size.
But of course, for you, it's critical, isn't it? Because if someone's got a nickel allergy, they've got a nickel allergy. They're not interested in something that's, going to fight bed bugs. No. So that's going to be properly essential. I should just say to all the listeners, don't worry if you can't grab a pen and quickly scribble down where we're going with all of this, where all these links and these great tips and tools Andrew's giving us are, because I'll be putting them all on the show notes page. They're there for you right now. In fact, if you're listening to this, which is at ecommercemasterplan.com/allergy. So you can find links to everything that's being mentioned right there. So Andrew, one last question about where you are right now. You've got quite an interesting team structure, haven't you? So I wonder if you could just, not that, everything you've been saying already hasn't been incredibly interesting and useful. Your team structure is quite different. So if you could explain a bit about that.
Well, we're a virtual company. Really, that we don't have offices. There are three of us that work in the business with various tasks. There's myself, who kind of looks after thinking about stuff and planning. Then the two people who make the business actually work are indeed my wife Marianne, who I believe you know, and Marianne actually looks after the operation side of the business. but also contributes to the marketing as well. She has some, good ideas every now and again. And then the third person in the business is Chewy Essa. And what she looks after is that she actually is the person with the knowledge of the industry. So she does product sourcing. She looks after the blog, information. Basically, she's the company memory and company knowledge on the market. Now, we work in disparate places. So Marianne and I are both based in Bristol, and Chewy is based in London. So we do make decent use of technology. Our warehouse is outsourced, and is run in Newton Abbot by Client Base, and when you outsource a warehouse, you say, look, it's going to take 6 months before they get it. And particularly in an product area like ours, which needs a bit of expertise. And in actual fact, I think they got there in about 4 months. Wow. Which was fantastic. They've done a great job. And now we don't worry anymore.
And presumably they're doing your call center as well.
Yeah, they do. The great thing about moving is one of the great things is that we used to be a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday call center. And now we're open evenings and weekends too. So that's rather good. And full customer service and email responses too. So, it's a full contact center service that we get from them.
And so good to be able to concentrate on growing the business, not just on keeping the customers happy on that day-to-day basis, isn't it?
Yeah, and of course, if you look at the structure of any company, the greatest number of people are employed within operations, actually, making the ideas work, and therefore you do lose all the staff issues. I ran companies before I became a consultant, and I've got to say that 80% of your time is actually spent on staff issues.
Yep, I know that feeling. Sorry, that was awfully blunt from me there, but there you go.
Yeah, but true.
But true. So, Andrew, that's been really useful to understand a little bit about where you are kind of right now. What I would love, and I know our listeners would find really fascinating, is you're literally 8 months in to owning a brand new business, or to owning a brand new business to you that was already going. Give us have you got any tips you could share about how you made the decision to buy, about how, things you've learnt going through the process of setting up a new company?
Sure. What happened is as a consultant, and my wife is actually is also a consultant in another field, is that you actually are only earning money when you're sitting in front of somebody. And giving them advice or writing them a paper or something like that. Yeah. And I wanted what I called a car park business. And the great, there's a bloke who used to own loads of car parks, and he said, the great things about car parks is they make you money while you're asleep. An e-commerce business makes you money while you're not doing anything. It's marvelous. People turn up because you've got all these automated processes, and people just come to your site and spend money. And I thought this would be great, me actually earning money without having to, get in a car and travel and do all these other things. And so for a while, for a few years, we were looking for the right opportunity. And we had a little foray a few years ago, which, was, kind of didn't do what we wanted it to do. And so we licked our wounds and moved on. And then, I was actually asked by a friend, I think Ian Simpson at Catalogues for Business. I do. And Ian said to me, he said, you want to go and see Chewy Essa? I think they could benefit from your help. And I went along, and businesses of that kind of size, and not being funny, generally can't afford me. Of my size, I can't afford my own consultancy. But I like Chewy, and I actually really like the business. And I thought, this could be it. And then Robert, who was the co-owner, was actually 85 years old. Wow. And Robert's brilliant. He drives into work every day, and he's working away, and he's a great example of keep doing something to stay young. But he was ready to pack it in, and so we went into a very long and protracted negotiation over buying the company. And one tip in buying a company is you always value less something that somebody else owns. than if you owned it. And so what happens is you do get to quite a long negotiation. It did take us about 2 years to buy the. Yeah, no, it was a kind of. It was a triumph of hope over experience. But it did take us a long time, and it was very amicable. But they've been working on the business for about 14 years. And when, some bright spark comes up and say, I'm going to offer you this for it, you think, that much? For 14 years? You've got to be kidding. But, the unfortunate thing is that small businesses generally aren't worth too much unless somebody really, really wants them. If Boots decided they want Allergy Best Buys, they wouldn't mind throwing a few million at it. But, I'm not in that league. Yeah. And so also small businesses are actually quite hard to value. Because if you look at them on paper, they're worth absolutely nothing.
Oh, it's totally that supply and that route of supply and demand. Well, your accountant can tell you any number, and yes, you should have an idea of what it might be worth. But until someone's willing to buy it, there's no price on it. It's it's well, how much do you want to pay for it? Well, I don't know. How much do you want for it? Well, I don't know. So I totally understand why it could have taken 2 years, because it's very, very hard to value. Because it's, I guess, however much due diligence you do, you're still basing it on unknowns. Yeah. So did you do a lot of due diligence in this process? Oh yeah,
quite a bit. I mean, one thing about the valuation, I just nip back there. I mean, you either the sums are you either pay 4 to 8 times EBIT, earnings before interest and taxes. So you that's a good way of valuing a business, because a little business, it's not very much money and doesn't represent good value for the owners who are selling it. So actually, I had some very good advice, both from Graham Wynne, who was at Healthy Direct and is now owns Flower Card, and indeed from George Adams, who I've met when he worked at 3 Eyes, and he's now at Piper. George, both of which said, basically screw what the finances say, pay how much you want it.
Interesting, because I should just explain to everyone who's listening, Piper is Piper Private Equity, who are specialists in, I think they're just in the UK, at buying and growing e-commerce businesses. So for them to be giving that advice, that's unbelievably useful advice for anyone out there who's either thinking of selling or thinking of buying.
I mean, I have to say, George did this as George. And George is a really nice VC. He's a really great VC, and he's a nice guy. And he that was his personal advice. It wasn't backed by Piper. It was actually backed by, it was him. And I just phoned him and said, George, what do you think? And he was very kind. And I think that's good advice. The other thing, due diligence. Yes, we did due diligence, but the way the company was structured, the data and finances came from in different streams. So it's fairly hard to unpick. And at a certain point, you have to say, well, there's that amount of money in the bank. They seem to have taken that amount of money in sales. That seems to be absolutely tickety-boo. The big tip, though, on due diligence, though, is make no assumptions. Not a single one. Because, there will be, check they've got all their registrations for this. Check that. Do they own the rights to that? Do they? Because you walk it and you believe, because you come from other businesses, that stuff will be in place. You have honestly to check everything. Otherwise, you will start to get nasty letters in the post. We had a couple of nasties, in as much as when business ownership changes, this is seen by people scan companies' house all the time, and it's seen as an opportunity. And it appears that on the website, a couple of images had appeared, which there were. I don't know who did it, but somebody had copied and pasted it from the internet. And of course, everything on the internet is free, isn't it? And so, in the first week of owning the business, we had a cease and desist and a bill for $4,500.
Nice.
Yeah, it was lovely. But in actual fact, it's a fishing expedition. They spotted that the directors had changed, and there are search engines now which search for for images, and all the libraries of image libraries have signed up to this, and it's a new income stream for them. And send $4,500 into I don't know, ASOS, so they'll probably just pay it, pay out a petty cash. But we fought it, and we looked what that image would have cost us, and it would have cost us about 40 quid. So we offered them 80 quid, and then said that's all you're going to get. It was just one little image.
I think that make no assumptions, yes, when you're buying a company, makes perfect sense. And actually, the longer I'm in business, the more I realise assumptions are the enemy even. Assumptions are the enemy of success. Yeah. Even if you're working with someone, you can assume they think about it the same way you do. So you don't put it on the table, and then you discover 6 months later, the reason that project, that marketing campaign didn't work is because you'd assumed they were going to do that, which you knew was going to be the crux of the matter, and actually they weren't, because they didn't even realise that was an option. So I think assumptions are a very dangerous thing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I when I'm doing consultancy, I have to be diplomatic, but I have to inquire into how far up the skill set they are in certain things, because you think what I do is I send out 20 questions, of which there are 32, which just go through. It just goes through how the company operates and all the rest of it, and basically in certain instances. Don't know answer is more informative than the answer that they do know, because it actually says, there's a gap in the skill set here.
Exactly. It's you've got, in this age where there's so much going on, you have to be willing to admit when you don't know what something is. Yeah. It's like before this call, everyone, Andrew and I were talking about a source of traffic that he's getting a lot of traffic from. Neither of us had ever heard of it before. And we kind of both agree, well, we would have just assumed it was a spider. But actually, it's a really valuable marketing tool.
Yes, it's in fact, we're big in Brazil. We get a lot of traffic from a Brazilian social network, and I didn't know what it was. And we get lots of it. Goodness knows how. But the thing is, because we blog a lot about things which are universal, then we get our articles get coverage throughout the world, and to the extent that our biggest landing page, bigger than our homepage, is in fact an advice on how to buy anti-allergy pillows and blankets and duvets.
Which in your marketplace, it just has to be, doesn't it? If you've not got that experience, that trust, people just aren't going to be so likely to buy. No. Before we move on to the next part, Andrew, have you got any last top tips for people on going through the process of buying an existing e-commerce business?
I think don't be in a hurry. False deadlines are dreadful things. You've got to, first of all, check everything, and make no assumptions about the business, get the money sorted out, have a good look at the results that you're given, and try and buy dispassionately. Because the trouble is that the person who is looking at the business actually really wants it. That's why they're looking at it. And in the process of wanting, they can actually ignore things that they shouldn't ignore. So buy it as if you buy and sell businesses every day and you don't care much about them. But, in somewhere you compartment off loving it. And the other thing is actually do try and buy a business that you believe in.
Yes, I think that's critical, isn't it? Because it's going to be the day the paperwork's signed, you've got to get into that business and do something with it. So if you don't actually want to, then it's, however good the numbers look, it's just, unless you're enjoying it, unless you're wanting to be there, it's just never going to deliver for you.
Yeah, I mean, we bought one of the reasons we built the business is we have a daughter who had asthma, and there's some interesting stuff. I mean, Ella's asthma is well controlled, but we actually rather like the product. And I mean, my background, I mean, I was in gifts for years and years and years, as you well know. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm very enthusiastic about gifts. I sell thousands of inflatable model Titanics with inflatable icebergs for you to use in the bath. It was, I sold, crap that people don't need for years. But what attracted me about this business and liked about it is, I don't really get into sort of rubbish about doing some good, but you actually felt the stuff you were doing, you're selling actually was worthwhile doing.
Yeah, there's sometimes it's that personal resonance that really drives you to do it, isn't it? And that's always a good thing.
Yeah, but I mean, what my original point was: don't rush, because you can make mistakes. Just take your time. I mean, it took us 2 years, but we did the deal that we needed to do,
and everyone's happy, which is
I think so.
Which is one of the good things about not rushing it, is you want everyone to be happy at the end of the process, I think.
And actually, taking your time does allow more things to come out that you need to know.
Yeah, if you see it go through a whole 2 years of cycle, then there's any crisis will happen within those 2 years, I would suggest.
Yeah, and the other thing is, when you're talking to people, always use dear old Alan Wicker, who was, much mocked, was actually a very good interviewer. And what he used to do, and for anybody who doesn't know him, he used to travel the world interviewing rich people, and he would ask a question, and then the person he was interviewing would give their answer, and then Wicker would just say nothing. And then the interviewee would give the answer that he wanted. And actually, listening and waiting is great when you're buying a business.
Yeah, don't answer the question for them.
No.
Yeah, silence is your friend.
Yes.
Okay, it's now time for the top tips round. I love this section because it gives me and our listeners some really quick ideas for taking our businesses to the next level. Andrew, are you ready for the quickfire top tips?
Oh God, here we go.
Don't worry, it'll be fine. It's easy. So that first off is your book top tip. If everyone listening to this podcast agreed to take Friday off and read a book to make their business better, what book would you recommend?
Oddly enough, it's a book that came out round about the time you were on my course. And it's, sometimes there are eternal truths, even though technology may change. And it's Krug's Don't Make Me Think. You can read it in 2 hours, and, you can look at it and you can laugh at the technology and all the rest of it. But the thought behind it is absolutely fantastic. And it should follow, you should follow it to build any website, because it works from, oddly enough, it works from the position of make no assumptions about the customer's intelligence. Basically, make it easy for everybody. And it, as I say, take 2 hours to read it, and you read stuff and you go, actually, yes, I know that to be absolutely true, but I just couldn't have put it as well. And it's just got, little bits of truth in it, which will stand as great principles if you're running an e-commerce site.
Excellent. Brilliant top tip.
Don't know if you can still get it. But
I believe you can. I'm pretty certain you can still get it, because I think it came up on Amazon the other day for me. But we'll add links to it on the site. So your traffic top tip, which marketing method do you either prize above all others or think doesn't get the press it deserves?
Oh, traffic method. For us, we have fairly good search results. And we have used we've used Google Shopping to sort of cover the gap, and we found that to be a bit of a double-edged sword and takes a lot of tweaking, as you well know. Mm-hmm. But actually, just getting good content. I mean, I know people say this all the time, but actually, content is fantastic. I mean, I said about our pillows and duvets, we have got actually an advice page that outpulls our homepage. And
in terms of traffic being pulled into your website, in terms of landing page? As a landing page. Wow.
It is our most trafficked piece of thing. And the thing is, it doesn't actually, it doesn't rank that highly on the search results, but it is for certain terms. But we have got advice content on our site, which pulls really well. And it pulls in. And of course, every advice page is linked to product. And the internal links, evidently from that high high value page reflects on the product. So actually getting good advice content is fab. It takes work and it takes expertise, but actually for us, it works great.
And I think you made a really good point there that it's not about the rankings, it's about the traffic.
Yeah. Which absolutely.
Is such an important thing for people to understand. Okay, so our next top tip is the tool top tip. Maybe this is a team collaboration tool, a social media plugin, timesheeting tool, phone app, or just a way of working. Andrew, is there a cool little widget you use that makes you and your team more efficient day to day?
Yeah, I mean, we read a lot of things about the getting things done, philosophy, and so we alighted on Nosby. Which is paid for. You pay not an awful lot of money to get 2 users and a little bit more to get 3. And what you can do is not only give yourself tasks, but you can assign tasks, you can collaborate on tasks. And it's very good. And of course, with us being in disparate places, it's easy to work. It's easy to work. And what you do is you don't communicate via email. You communicate via Nosby. And so there's room for notes, there's room for to-dos, there's room for lists. It integrates with Evernote, so you can pull documents out of it, and it also integrates with Dropbox. So it's a very useful tool for people who are running businesses who are geographically separated.
Excellent. I would say that's not one I've come across before. So how are you spelling it so I can put the link on the show notes?
Bizarrely, as it sounds, Nozbe.
Oh, I had an S in there, so it's a good job I asked.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Nosby, and it's good. I've been through quite a few of these, and I like this one best. And also, it does have some good tuition actually built into either the app or the site. You can have it as we're a Mac house, so we can have it as an app on our Macs, an app on our iPhones. You can also use it web-based, should you wish, and evidently being cloud-based, it everything is across all devices, so it's handy. It's handy. And if push comes to shove, you can always use it for shopping in Sainsbury's.
It does everything.
It does everything. Yeah.
Okay, so your startup top tip: if you met someone this weekend who is thinking of starting up an e-commerce business, what would be your number one tip for them?
Make friends with people who've had experience, or find some money for a good consultant. In my consultancy days, the greatest tragedies were companies I went into who, if I'd been there at the beginning, they would not have dumped shed loads of money. You've got a great idea, that's great. You've got your own bit of expertise, but try and associate with people who are, in the know. I mean, I have a slight bias here. I'm on a co-chair of one of the bits of one of the organizations, the DCA. And the great thing about that is that the constituency is wide. So, we have, people come to our events who have just started up, and we have people like Nick Wheeler from Charles Tyrwhitt, who, is turning over 160 million. I mean, we do get a load of people, a load of different people there. And of course, solutions are different for different businesses. But actually, if you're on startup, talk to somebody who's done it and try and avoid the really, really costly mistakes. Because, you probably know a lot about your subject. You probably know a lot about your little bit, but there's going to be gaps in your knowledge, and actually try and fill those.
I totally echo all of that. And Master Plan World, you can find all these top tips and links to everything else we've been chatting about in today's episode by going to ecommercemasterplan.com/allergy. I have one final top tips question for you, Andrew. If your business didn't exist, which e-commerce business would you like to be running and why?
Oh, that's a tricky old question, isn't it? Yeah, yes, and why? Actually, yeah. The thing is, the business I really like is actually a client of mine. And if I ran it, I'd spoil it. But because they have a brand. But just for sheer enthusiasm for getting traction and all the rest of it, it's not too far away from you, from your Cornish place. It's down in Falmouth. It's a brand called Sea Salt.
Ah, yes.
And Sea Salt I've worked with for a few years now. And they are going to be absolutely huge, but it's just the sheer fun of the brand. And I love it. And I think they do really well. But you see, the thing is, one of the reasons that it works is that the brand vision that comes through from the founders of the company, if I ran it, wouldn't be there.
Yeah, so it's kind of, you'd love to be in there, but you know it couldn't be you. But yeah, I agree. They are an absolutely fascinating business. So Andrew, what a fascinating chat. It's been a real pleasure to spend time with you today, discovering how you're driving your mail order e-commerce business. Before we say goodbye and wrap up, would you like to remind listeners where they can find you and your business on the web and social media?
Our business is allergybestbuys.co.uk. That's that. And if you're on Twitter, you bang in Allergy Best Buys, and exactly the same on, actually, I think we haven't got an S on Allergy Best Buys, but you still find us on Twitter. And the same on Facebook. We have, one of the things that we have done, by the way, is we actually is tried to revise our approach to social media in the last 6 months. It was a very deserted area for the company. And so we've upped that. So we're not doing fabulously, yet, but we are building the constituency slowly. But it is a slow business for us in social media.
Brilliant. Thanks, Andrew. We'll add links to all of that and everything else we've talked about today in the show notes. Masterplan World, you can find those at ecommercemasterplan.com/allergy, or just go to the website, click on the podcast tab, or use the search box. Andrew, thank you for being on eCommerce Masterplan podcast today and for being so incredibly generous, sharing your experience with us.
That's my pleasure. It's been fun.
Catch you all next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the eCommerce Master Plan podcast. Find out more at ecommercemasterplan.com.